Hello everyone and welcome back to Quickflicks, and today we'll be talking about Matt Reeves' The Batman. Batman has had plenty of different incarnations in plenty of media forms, whether it be comic books, movies, television shows, serials, video games, or even Diet Coke commercials.
The gentleman is usually in quite a rush.
Just for the taste of it, Diet Coke.
And the Batman is but a long line in this representation in media. And this time we follow Robert Pattinson's portrayal as he plays a younger Bruce Wayne. This is his second year on the job. There's people in this world that still don't really trust him, even some of the civilians don't. But at the same time, you have Jeffrey Wright's Jim Gordon, who is trusting a little bit of the Batman, even though the rest of the police union is like, yeah, we don't really trust him, as Batman is now tasked to try to figure out Riddler's big old plan and how that ties into the mob bosses of Gotham and how that ties into the deeper underbelly of Gotham's greed and corruption. I will say for the most part, this is a really, really good movie. I don't think it's the best Batman movie, but I do think it's pretty good. I do have my issues with it, and we'll get those out of the way really quickly before I go into my big appreciation for this movie. I do think that pacing-wise, it is pretty slow, and I do think there are times where this movie doesn't really bring a lot more to the table in terms of what it's saying, and I think that's kind of fine for a Batman movie. Like, if you're familiar with the general idea of things like the Court of Owls, or even some of the deeper underbelly stuff of Gotham, if you know a lot about the mob bosses or anything like that, in terms of the themes, it's all pretty surface level. There's nothing really much you could delve deeper into the themes of this movie. It's pretty much more like surface level. Okay? I want to get that out of the way because it's actually good. It's good themes. I just think it doesn't necessarily go too far deeper into this movie, and you know, I do see some people saying it's an intellectuals movie, and I don't really believe that at all. But with those issues I have with it out of the way, let's talk about the things I like. Let's talk about the score. The biggest thing I like about this movie is the film's score, which is done by Michael Giacchino, and I have yet to hear a bad score from Michael. I think Michael does a really good job with the score, with different characters as motifs, with Batman's more like vengeful, creeping darkness theme, and then with Riddler's more like sickening strings, which is just kind of disturbing and adds to that layer of complexity and the disturbing factor of who Paul Dano plays. It's pretty good. It's pretty good themes, and I really do like the music in this movie. It's really good. And then we come to the cinematography of this movie, and I think the cinematography does wonders for this movie. There are times where Batman is in the shadows and you don't really know if he's there or not in the beginning of this movie, and it's pretty good. It does help instill the fear of who Batman is into the hearts of criminals, and it does work to its benefit. When you see Batman like protrude from the darkness in a slow walking maneuver, this sort of slow imposing terror, like, it's really scary. And it's also mixed with some great sound design, sound mixing, with the boots just like stomping in, or not really stomping in, but like these heavy boots just make them sound imposing. And it's really good. Another positive I like is, well, the Batsuit. I think the Batsuit this time around has a little bit more mobility in terms of his head movement, which has always been kind of a problem with a lot of Batman like actors when it comes to head movements in general. Sometimes it's hard for some of them to do that. I mean, look at Michael Keaton's Batman, for instance. He had to move his entire body in order to look at people. And in this one, I think he does a really good job. The costume designers of this movie did a really good job making this suit the way that it does. I do think I do have one issue, though, with the suit, and that is it's not really like... It looks maybe too armored. And I think part of the reason why Batman instills a lot of fear in people is that he gives off the appearance of a normal person in normal-ish clothing. I mean, granted, he still wears like a bat suit, but it's not as armored as what we see in this movie, which does kind of like deteriorate some of the fear because he's like wearing armor plating. Like, that's kind of, you know what I mean? It doesn't necessarily instill fear because, like, for many criminals, it's like, oh, well, he just looks like a normal person. Let's shoot at him. And then, like, the bullet ricochets. It's like, what the hell? You know, that kind of stuff, right? And I don't think that translates well here because it's all an armored look. But it does look good. I do think the Batsuit looks really, really good. Not saying it's bad. I just have, like, a minor nitpick with it. And then we get to the cast of this movie. Robert Pattinson does an amazing job as Batman. I think as Bruce Wayne, and I do really think Robert Pattinson's version of Bruce Wayne and Batman is really good. This version of Batman is a little bit more reclusive than I have previously seen in the past, where he's been more of a playboy. But that's mostly because of the fact that at that point in time, he's a little bit more further along and experienced. And I can live with the fact that he's not as much of a playboy yet to really play that side of the investigative side of Batman's persona. But that being said, Robert Pattinson does bring a lot of vitality and just a little bit of emotional side to Bruce Wayne that we haven't really seen in the past, especially when certain secrets are revealed later on in the film that I'm not going to give away here. But rest assured, it's pretty good stuff. Then we get to Zoe Kravitz, who plays Catwoman, and again, much like Batman, there's plenty of different incarnations, and I think this version of Catwoman has a lot of understandable motives and just is great. She looks great. She acts great. I think she's cool. There we go. Then we also get to Jeffrey Wright, who plays Jim Gordon. Pretty good guy. Great mustache. I don't really have a lot to say about him. He's really good. I think he does a really good job. I think Jeffrey Wright does a good job, and I hope to see more of him in his GCPD show, which apparently is going to be on HBO Max. Then we come to the Penguin. The Penguin, played by Colin Farrell. I think the makeup artist did a really good job transforming Colin Farrell's face to what we see in this movie. He does a really good job personifying this sort of like gimpy, like overly self-confident type of person. And I can't wait to see more of him in his own HBO Max show, which also got announced, as well as an Arkham Asylum show. So yeah, there's that. And then we come to Alfred, who is played by the classic Andy Serkis, who he worked with Matt Reeves before in the previous two Planet of the Apes films as Caesar, and he does a pretty good job as Alfred. Even if there's not a lot of Alfred in this movie, he does have a pretty decent presence, especially in one key sequence, which I'm not going to discuss. And then we come to the big bad of this movie, Paul Dano's the Riddler. He is no Jim Carrey, but I do think he does bring a lot of creep to it. He puzzles Batman. He puzzles everyone else. He makes him question like everything in this society. It's pretty interesting. And I do think he's kind of a mix at times between Jigsaw, the Zodiac Killer, and regular Riddler. I think he does a really good job. And in all honesty, I'm kind of glad we got this version of the Riddler in this movie, instead of the ones we get in the Arkham games. Goddamn Riddler trophies.
What's wrong? Has your primitive brain given up and accepted that I, the Riddler, am better than you?
But yeah, I think Paul Dano does a really excellent job as this version of the Riddler, and maybe we'll see more of him in this future. I do think that Paul Dano's Riddler has a lot to do with this movie. I think he's really good. He's stated pretty well. Don't really have a lot else to say about him. That's just it. As far as the overall picture of this movie goes, I do think this is not necessarily my favorite of the Batman movies, but I do think this is probably top 5 for me. My favorite is still the Lego Batman movie. Sorry, I'm the outlier. Everyone else is going to say, but what about The Dark Knight? What about Batman 89? I'm sorry, I like Lego Batman and Mask of the Phantasm more. And maybe on a rewatch, maybe I'll change my adjustment, but as far as everyone else is concerned, I think the Batman is just fine. I think it is pretty good. Personally, I'm not necessarily one for the dark and gritty Batman movies anymore, but this one is definitely better. It's much more of a crime noir, pulpish type movie that takes its time, and that's probably going to be a deterrent for some people, but I do think that the noir aspect, the mystery aspect, is what makes Batman pretty interesting as well, with things such as The Long Halloween and Batman Year One. It all feels like a crime noir mystery story, and I think the Batman perfectly encapsulates that feeling. And I think Matt Reeves' direction does a really excellent job in portraying a lot of this stuff. Even if it doesn't all work for me, I do think the Batman is pretty good, and you should probably watch it. So yeah, I'm going to give the Batman a B+. Thank you guys so much for watching my review of The Batman. What do you guys think about it? What are your hopes for the future of the franchise or whatever? Who's your favorite Batman? Who's your favorite villain? And I can't wait to see what we have next in this franchise, I guess. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.